Welcome. I'm Pamela Riccia from livingjoyfully.ca, and today I'm here with Alec Traaseth. Hi, Alec.
Oh, hey, how's it going?
Very good, very good. Just so everyone knows, I met Alec and his family years ago for the first time at an unschooling conference, and I really enjoyed catching glimpses of his comings and goings online ever since Facebook came around. I'm really excited that he said yes when I asked if he'd be up for sharing a bit about his experience growing up unschooling. So to get us started, Alec, can you share with us a bit about you and your family?
Absolutely. So I'm the oldest of three kids. I'm 25 years old now. I have two younger sisters, Abby and Kira. Abby is 23 now, about to be 24. Kira just turned 21 this year. And my parents are Kelly and Tim Traaseth, and my mom's been in and out of the unschooling community, and was a big name on many forums and groups a long time ago. So a lot of people have heard of her, but she's been less involved online in the last probably 5, 6, 7 years.
Well, yeah, so, you guys got older.
Yeah, as we got older, but and then my father works as a pharmaceutical sales representative for Eli Lilly and Company, and we all live in Charlottesville, Virginia. And me and my sister Abby go to UVA here in Charlottesville together, and my sister Kira is working as a freelance photographer / artist / etc. So
slash etc.
yeah, odd jobs, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what do you remember about your family's move to unschooling? How old were you at the time?
So I was, let's see, what is the second grade, third grade age? Is that 9 or 10 years old, I think?
Mm-hmm.
But in first grade and second grade, my mom noticed that I started not really being engaged with school, not really feeling engaged with life, not really wanting to get up for school. It wasn't something I was excited for after kindergarten, after going into first grade. And after a year of that in second grade, she decided that she wanted to try something different. So we started off with homeschooling. We had set things we were supposed to do throughout the day, journaling that we were supposed to do, and topics we were supposed to select and learn about. And I went back to third grade for a little while. And then in third grade, I decided that, no, I want to go back to homeschooling on my own accord. And I asked her, can I just stop going to school? And she said, yeah, that's fine. And Abby stuck it out through, she was in second grade at the time. She stuck it out to the end, but then she joined me homeschooling. And then our transition to unschooling was very gradual. It was kind of like the restrictions on us and the requirements imposed on us were just kind of relaxed, kind of organically over time. And it didn't really feel like it was just like, oh, now we're unschooling.
Yeah.
It was more like over a long period of time, maybe a couple of years, we started morphing into unschooling, and specifically having more freedom, not having any set curriculum, and really being able to make our own decisions about what we were doing and what we were learning.
Mm-hmm.
And so on.
Yeah, I love the way you describe that as just kind of evolving organically. So I guess, as a family now, you're living together. Now she gets to see you guys learning all the time, no matter what you're doing, and comparing that with, the journaling and just seeing the interest and the engagement in it, and over time seeing how you're learning through all sorts of different things. And then you guys also, I think, feeling more agency over your choices as you were given that bit of freedom. Does that kind of make sense? How it
developed? No, absolutely.
Organically? Yeah.
So, and that's one of the biggest things that I value from unschooling, is that I had control over, what I was doing, what I was learning. And really that's how I was able to learn so much about myself, and eventually now, knowing what I like, what I don't like, what I want to do, how to control, or how to take care of myself. I learned how to do that on my own, as far as eating well and sleeping enough and things like that. I was able to learn on my own without it kind of enforced on me. So
Yeah, and then you pick up what works for you too, right? Along the way. I love that because I think that's one of, because once you get over that first hurdle of realizing, that they're learning and they can learn all the time, whatever they want, once you get past that learning hurdle, I think one of the biggest positive outcomes, I guess, from it is that level of self-awareness that everybody can figure out how they tick, because it is so individual, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. And I know we're not to the college discussion yet, but I can certainly talk. I see in other college students when I started out. Yeah. So.
Well, yeah, we'll definitely remember to roll back to that.
Kind of some of the
stories.
The lack of agency and what that does, right? So.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. Okay, just before we get up to that, can you share maybe a little bit about what your interests were growing up and how you pursued them?
So I was always focused on basically one thing at a time. And when we started unschooling, for me, that was gaming. So I grew up gaming a lot. And as soon as I had the freedom to, I did it a lot. And a lot of people look at that and they say, wow, I can't believe, your childhood was spent mostly gaming. And aside from that, I also loved to play the drums, loved music, but gaming really was the main big interest for me. And I think the main reason is it provided a challenge for me. I sought out games that challenged me, that made me think, and basically puzzles to solve, right? And that kind of ties into my eventual interest in math. But I was turned off from math at a very young age because I was forced to learn it in this way. And, it did not happen naturally. And it was this artificial construct that, is being shoved in my face that, it works this way because I tell you it works this way. And I wasn't viewing it as a puzzle. But video games at the time, they were puzzles, challenges, things for me to accomplish, things to challenge me mentally. I was never the type to get into sports. I never enjoyed challenging myself physically. That's not, even when I'm drumming, I'm just like, I wish I could play faster. That's like the limitation. I don't want to put in the physical work to play faster because I like challenging my head with the more technical aspects of it. But so I loved being challenged mentally, challenged through, basically anything. So video games were the best way for me to do that. Reading books, that was too passive for me. Watching television, which, I enjoyed, I didn't do it as much because, again, it didn't engage me. I wasn't the one making the decisions. I wasn't the one solving the problems. And so, that was a very formative thing for me, even though video games get a very, very bad rap in a lot of circles. I think that's improving. I think people are seeing that really it's just a book that has a higher level of interaction and challenge at times. But
yeah, I think, that would be a great thing, that you mentioned to speak to a little bit, is because that's what I saw with my eldest son too. Because I remember having video games discussions with your mom many years ago.
Well, I remember I played some video games with him briefly when we saw each other.
Oh yeah, ago. That's right too. But Halo that is the yeah, that's the joy, right? But there's so much analytical thinking, like as you talked about puzzles and the mental challenge of figuring it out, of figuring things out, whether it's, even math, arithmetic on the fly, right? Figuring out levels and hit points and all that kind of stuff. But the actual analytical thinking that goes into it just to figure out the puzzle, even if it's not a literal puzzle in the game, the puzzle of how to go through from one place to the next, etc., and go from level to level. There's really so much learning in there, isn't there?
Yep, and that's something that is lost on a lot of critics of video games, I think. And when I say, oh yeah, I grew up playing lots of video games, people are like, oh, that's what unschooling is, huh? You just play video games. It's like, but it's not just playing video games. That's
one of the things we talk about so much is, or we suggest is try playing yourself.
Exactly. Oh yeah. And Unless you're playing, and let me tell you, my dad does that. My dad plays games. He likes a game called Snood, which is where you're shooting little things up and making things match. It's like one of those, almost like a Bejeweled type of thing.
Ah,
And like, I can't play those. I can't play games like that because they are kind of just mindless relaxation.
yeah.
And he admits it, and it's cool. It's cool to have a mindless outlet like that. But like, if I had been doing games like that all day when I was growing up, I would have been bored out of my mind. So,
Well, yeah, you wouldn't have chosen that. That's the whole idea,
exactly.
right? Between being free to choose what you're doing. Like people think, oh, if the kids are free to choose, they're just going to choose mindless activities. They won't challenge themselves. They won't choose things that, um, take their mind to the edge of their processing capabilities, push them further, even if it's a physical, interest that they have, same deal. Why would they bother? But that's something we think that's human, but really that's something we learned growing up on our own, and unschooling kids don't learn that, right?
Right, exactly. It's a
Or they move past
that's
it.
that's an attitude that's developed from being forced to do challenging activities that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
The difference is, are you challenging yourself with things you are enjoying versus challenging yourself with things that have been assigned to you.
Well, that's another great point, because another question to ask newer unschoolers is, what do you do for a hobby? Because we always devalue our hobbies, but boy, will we stay engaged with them, right? And we'll put more effort, and yet we feel guilty. We've been taught to feel guilty about putting time into those because they're not real. They're just what we do on the side. But it can really open somebody's eyes to seeing how people will willingly challenge themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I wanted to ask this question too, because we've mentioned that we've crossed paths at unschooling conferences, and you guys came for a visit. And when we first connected about doing this call, you were at an unschooler summer camp. And
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping you could share a bit about your conference and camp experiences, so that, some parents who are curious about that can learn a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So my first unschooling kind of function was Live and Learn, the second ever Live and Learn, which was, my goodness, I don't even know what year now.
That's the first one we went to too.
Okay, cool, yeah. So maybe you know which year it was then?
Oh, 3, 4. I think it was 2005, 4 or 5.
Yeah, that sounds right. Because it ended in 2009. Was that the last one?
We went to the last one too. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So my entire family went to Live and Learn for the second one up to the last one, and for me that was kind of my yearly interactions with other unschoolers, because I was living in Minnesota with my family, and we knew maybe one or two other families that kind of approached, were kind of doing something like us, but still not quite, kind of thing. So to really be in my element with other people who were living the same life as me, Live and Learn was where that happened. So and it basically just turned into it would be a long weekend where I got to see, some of my best friends and just, play games with them and run around a hotel that we all, well, yeah, that was not so good. The hotel staff certainly hated those groups. But for the most part, keeping it civil. But so playing games, meeting new people, that's where I made all of my unschooling connections that I still have today with, all sorts of families. The Bowmans who run eTusk, which I'll talk about in a second, the summer camp. The Lovejoys who ran Live and Learn, and so many other families. The Creams up in Boston are super close friends with my family because of Live and Learn, and we still see them sometimes, and so on and so forth. For my parents, these conferences were important as well, because they got to go and see other people doing this new weird thing that they weren't entirely sold on yet, and seeing them, thriving, seeing these other people thriving as unschoolers, and going to the talks and the speeches that were being run by, unschooling parents, occasionally unschooled adults. Unschooled adults were pretty rare back then because it was such a new movement still, right? We were all the guinea pig unschooling generation, of course. But so that was extremely beneficial to them, being able to hear from other parents, set their minds at ease, just hearing all these different experiences. And then also there's just, what they call fun shops, right? Their workshops were just a blast. So, our whole family enjoyed them every single time. And there was something for everybody. If I wanted to hang out in a room and play games with a friend, or if I wanted to go and learn how to, I don't know, hula hoop or whatever, they had more serious ones too, but the fun shops. Not that hula hooping is not serious. My youngest sister is a very serious hula hooper, excellent hula hooper. So that's my conference experience. I also went to Cameron's, Kelly Lovejoy's son's, his autodidactic symposium that ran 1 or 2 years. I went to that once, which was a very, very similar kind of thing to live and learn. I also went to Life is Good once out in Oregon.
Oh yeah.
It was in Vancouver, Washington last time, or the time I went, I think. Run by that's Mary Gold, and that is still running, I believe. So that's one of the options. Yeah. But when I was there, that was a very similar experience to live and learn. So a good way to hear from other people, living as unschoolers, meet them, and make connections with them. And then the summer camps. That's something less for, a family. Conferences really appeal to entire families, of course. The summer camps are just for the unschooled children, the kids. Mm-hmm. And the one that the only one I've been to and that I've been going to is at East Tennessee Unschooled Summer Camp. It started 8 years ago. So this year was our 9th ETUSC. Wow. And and it's run by Laura Bowman, who I've been friends with for a long time. I went to the first one as a camper, and that was interesting. It was kind of a startup. So basically every parent who knew Laura sent their kids to the first year of the camp, because those are the people she was connected with, and those are the people she was able to sell the camp to. So kind of by proxy, I knew all of those people through Laura. So it was just, the first year was just go and hang out with 30 people that you already knew and have a fun week. And it was great. But what ETUSC has become is even more amazing, because then the next year the word got out. And now when I go, I meet all these new unschoolers, ages from as young as 12 all the way up to 18, sometimes 19, all at this camp. And, you just are amazed by how many people are unschooling that, you don't even know them. Because it used to be like, oh, you're an unschooler. Well, then you clearly know this other unschooler. It's like, it's like that stereotype when like, oh, you're Filipino. I know another Filipino person. You know them, don't you? It's like, no. So it's becoming that, we actually, we're not just like this weird tiny group. We're actually a true minority in the education system. So, there's all these people that show up every year that I've never met, and that's really, really great to see. And aside from just the people who are there, what we do is really fun. We have workshops throughout the week led by staff. We have various activities meant to help campers bond with each other. Rock wall climbing, outdoor ropes courses. We've got a couple pool days. There's of course a dance. There's, a talent show for people to go up and show off what they're able to do. A skit night for all the campy skits, and also mentor groups is a big thing that they stress at ETUSC. And that's what I've been doing for 7 years now. I've been a mentor at ETUSC, which every morning I have a group of kids I'm responsible for, and we meet. And the goal is to help new campers, new people who haven't met somebody yet, connect immediately with another group. And it gives them an opportunity to meet other campers without having to kind of take that step themselves. because, and I don't know how many younger folks, I guess it might be mostly parents listening in for a podcast like this, but so I shouldn't talk. I was thinking like, who's my audience right now? But so your kids, if they go to a place like this, even if they don't know a single person yet, they are going to make connections within that first couple of days, because you can't avoid making connections. And once you've made a couple connections, it becomes so much less intimidating. And a place like that for somebody who isn't used to big groups is really intimidating. So it's a place that makes every single person there feel welcome, no matter who they are, no matter their gender identity, orientation, etc. That and they're able to connect with other campers and do awesome things throughout the week. And as a mentor, I get to help facilitate that, and I get to help encourage that, and watch them grow. And I've always got a few campers at the start of the week who are kind of attached to me like glue, because I'm the one connection they have. I'm the one person they know. And usually by day 2 or 3, I just never see them ever again, because they've got their people that they like hanging out with. And seeing that each year is really, really fun. And yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say about Dusk. Yeah,
yeah, that sounds like it's such a fun experience for you,
I love it.
To focus on facilitating that for people. And how wonderful too, like as you said, we're still, unschoolers are still a pretty small group. And to be able to bring together, for other teens to see other kids, that are living the same kind of lifestyle in general that they're used to. So they're not so much the odd person out now. Yep. You know what I mean? To see, it sounds really inspiring and lovely for them as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And there's one other well-known camp as well, which is Not Back to School Camp, which is that one's in Vermont and then Oregon, I think. So, but those are the only 2 unschooler only camps. And I say only, we have had kids come who are in school in the past, mostly because they have connections to the unschooling community. But those are the only 2 I know of that are marketed for unschoolers. So it's, there's not a whole lot of options. So that's why we've got people coming in from, let's see, we had people flying in from New York and from California and from Florida, and, me driving from Virginia, all to this place in Tennessee to meet up and have a good week.
Yeah. So. Oh no, that sounds awesome. And I mean, that's why we're in Canada, driving down to the States for Live and Learns and all sorts of other conferences and camps and stuff over the years, because, it's nice to connect face to face with your tribe for a while. And like you said, my kids stayed in touch. They still have friends that they met there, and you can stay in touch. It's so much easier online now. I remember after Live and Learns, it was like email, right? People were sending emails back and forth. But
AOL Instant Messenger.
Yes, yeah.
I feel I age myself like 10 years when I say that.
I know. But I think it, and it all depends on the person, the child too, the teen, what they're interested in. They may not be interested in it, but if you think they may find it helpful to connect with other unschooling teens, just to see the kinds of the fabulously wide-ranging things that they're up to, the things that they're interested in, the talents that they have, and just hanging out together, it can be a life-changing experience, I think. Yeah. So thanks for helping.
Yeah, of course. And I don't believe any kid should be forced to go to a summer camp, of course, but I have witnessed kids who were forced to go to ETUSC, and they still came out of it as a fantastic week. So that was promising, although sad that they were forced in the first place. Yeah. So, and then one other gathering I wanted to mention is Argh. Have you ever?
I've heard of it.
With? Okay, so Argh is another one run by Laura Bowman, who runs eTask, and that one's another family-oriented one, except it's a little bit more casual than conferences. So it's like if you took unschooling conferences and kind of mixed it with eTask, so you kind of get the families together going to an event, but also you're camping essentially. It's except this one's in cabins, so you get a nice cabin entirely to your family. So for the people who enjoy just a nice, relaxing vacation in a cabin and they don't want to talk to anybody for a few days, it gives them that. But then also there's a communal area for people to go and hang out with other unschoolers. And that one appeals to families with much younger kids. So there's always, Nerf wars going on with 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old kids running around like crazy. And also adults, of course, get to spend a lot of time and get to know each other. So that's kind of to appeal to the other age ranges as well.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah, so it's like a campground family kind of gathering thing. Yes.
Yeah, where you just rent the cabin for the time, but then there are still,
there'll be other unschooling families there along with
exactly at the same time, and there are also scheduled workshops. And just like a conference, the thing it doesn't have that a conference has are the speeches and the talks and the like, here's why you should feel okay about this unschooling and stuff like that. So it's maybe less of a thing to go to as a brand new unschooler and more for just the social aspect and the vacationing with other unschoolers aspect.
Yeah, and the connections you can make, and I'm sure the conversations you still have with other unschoolers.
Yeah, and those conversations still happen. They're just not they're not organized, and they're not catering specifically to come here if you have no idea what unschooling is and need to learn. So they're not catering to that, but that certainly happens still.
Yeah, exactly. So now I thought we'd move on to your college years. And do you want to?
I can talk a lot about that.
A lot about this, yeah. So maybe start us off with the choice to go to college and how that developed.
I'm sorry, you hung up a little bit there.
Sorry. How about let's start with your choice to go to college and how that developed for you. Okay.
So I started college when I was 22, which is, later than traditional. But at 18, I knew that I wasn't ready to start college because I didn't really have any idea what I wanted to do or what I would go into. So from 18 to 22, that 4-year gap, I worked several different jobs just to get some experience. I worked pizza delivery. I worked at a grocery store for a little while, kind of typical entry-level stuff. And then I got a better job with a moving company for a while that I did for about a year. And for a while I was thinking, maybe I can. It was a very small local company in Charlottesville with a great kind of idea behind the company. What they were trying to do was declutter and help people who have way too much stuff get rid of stuff. And it was a service that, was really good and not really offered by any other companies. So I thought for a while, maybe I can stay here and work my way up into management positions or something like that, and eventually, make this into a living kind of thing. But ended up changing my mind pretty quickly because the owner was a terrible person to all of the employees. Mm-hmm. And so at that point I had been working for close to 4 years, and I decided, I think I would like to try something in engineering. I'd like to pursue it and see what happens. So for that, you of course need to go to college. You don't have engineers without at least a bachelor's degree typically. Yeah. So I decided, okay, well, let's look into that. So the first thing I found when I did the research, and from talking to local, we have another unschooling family here in Charlottesville, the Barrett, Sylvia, and Eddie. I spoke with Eddie, and he told me, UVA is a fantastic school, obviously right here in Charlottesville. It's the second best public college in the nation. And so you might not be able to start there, and I couldn't because I had no academic credentials from the previous 10 years, right? I didn't have any test scores. I wasn't ready to just go and take the ACT, et cetera. I didn't have the knowledge that I was expected to have at that moment. So I couldn't apply. I was in no place to apply to UVA, but he told me, hey, we have this PVCC, Piedmont Virginia Community College, and they have connections to UVA. And if you go and do 2 years there and do well, it's very easy to transfer into UVA. So looking into PVCC, community colleges have an open door policy, typically. You don't take any tests to get in. Rather, you get in automatically and you take a test to figure out where you start, a placement test.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the next thing I started researching is, okay, what's going on with this placement test? And there's an English portion to it and there's a math portion to it. The English portion, I was confident I'd have no problem with. I had spent the last 10 years communicating online with other people every day. I played a lot of online games as well, and that was a big part of it. So the math, though, that was a concern. As I said, I'd been turned off from math at a younger age, and so I hadn't really looked at it since the third grade, pretty much. I'd done plenty of arithmetic, plenty of arithmetic in everyday life, and I was actually really good at it too. I was able to find, since I had learned how to do it kind of on my own, just by what makes sense and what was logical, I was able to kind of develop little shortcuts and techniques to make more complicated computations easier in my head. So, that right there is kind of hinting at kind of how my passion for math ended up developing. But anyways, I didn't have any algebra experience at all, not even like I couldn't even solve a linear algebra 1 equation type of thing, just because I'd never done it. So I knew that if I went and just took the placement test as is, I would start in the developmental math, which that's not, there's nothing wrong with that, but I wanted to test out of the developmental math I could. So I went on, there's an online resource called Khan Academy, which maybe has come up before for you, I'm guessing. So very, very popular amongst unschoolers.
Yeah.
But they have videos and exercises for everything from first grade math all the way up through differential equations, which is typically a third-year college course. So I got on there and I just started doing things, and I committed about 4 hours a day for about 2 months. And then thanks to that, I was able to test out of all the developmental math and start in Precalculus. So, and that was my first, so at that point I had tested in Precalculus and decided, okay, time to enroll in classes. So, it was kind of late in the game. So I enrolled less than a month before classes actually started, which was great because community colleges are very flexible about that. Like up to classes starting, you can still enroll as a new student. So even though I decided kind of late in the summer to go, I was still able to. And so I had this really wonky schedule because I had to kind of fit all the classes together that were still available, which were a lot of evening classes and, weird times that people don't really like usually.
Yeah.
But so I signed up for that Precalculus class, an English class. They're mandatory, like orientation type thing, and a PE class. So I decided, I'll take it easy. I'll just take the 12 credits minimum full-time load, and see what happens. And everything ended up being pretty easy overall. So Precalculus was very intimidating at first, but once I got through the first test and saw I was doing all right, that was a huge boost to confidence. I think I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder. I'm like, I haven't done math in this long, I've got something to prove. And, the pressure felt, it was self-inflicted pressure, but also kind of societal pressure of sorts. But once I got over that first hump, past the first test, it was smooth sailing from there. And I found myself, I had so much free time on my hands, it was kind of silly. So I upped my load the next semester, took a few more credits and got a job as a teaching assistant for Precalculus. After I took Precalculus, started leading supplementary instruction sessions for the class, where I would have a classroom rented out for a certain amount of time, and people could come and ask me questions and do things with and work some math with me. And also around that time is when I took my first engineering class. So I didn't get to take my first engineering class until the spring.
Yeah.
And that was what I originally was like, okay, I want to go to school for engineering. So here I am. I can finally take an engineering class. And I really didn't like it very much. It was, I was like, oh crap, what happened to my plan? I'm not going to be an engineer. Shoot. So, but, one of the things one of the things that stood out to me is the professor showed us how much writing each major does on average. I think it was at a large university in Texas that they got the numbers, but engineers do the most writing of any major in college. And I was like, writing papers, it's not really my thing. It never really was my thing. So like my sister, she's a linguistics student. She loves writing and she gets to write all the time, and that's great. But that's not really for me. And I didn't really know what I was getting myself into at first with engineering. So, but yeah, it has a lot of writing, more than any other major. But what I noticed on the bottom of that list was, hey, math has the least writing, and the fewest pages per year written. And on top of that, the class that I was consistently looking forward to every week was my math class. So, the previous semester, I had a really, my first semester, I had a very, very influential and inspirational math instructor who, he talks about, oh yeah, I was Alec's first math instructor ever in his life. Cause, and I told him that eventually and talked to him about that. So, it was a very, very formative experience for me. And he was able to teach math not as, this formulaic, procedural thing where you learn an algorithm and you follow the algorithm and you get your answer, but rather as, a puzzle, as something where you need to figure out how it works in order to solve the problem. You don't learn how to solve a problem, you learn how it works, and then you know how to solve the problem. Yeah. So, that in combination with my somewhat bad experience in intro to engineering, basically I don't like measuring things and having imprecise measurements, etc. I decided, maybe I can just do math because that's what I'm enjoying. I should listen to that. And that was something, I pondered it for a couple months before I really made the leap, because engineers, they make pretty good money. And, but, I went and talked to my advisor, and their PVCC did not have a math major, but I was able to switch to basically just a liberal arts major. And, I decided to, instead of trying to complete the associate's degree at Piedmont, I decided, okay, I'm just going to target the classes that UVA needs and then try to get into UVA without my associate's degree. So as of right now, I still don't have an associate's degree. And I'm in my fourth year now at UVA. Second year at UVA, fourth year of college. But let's see. So, and yeah, that's kind of the major transitions for me. And then there was a pretty big transition from Piedmont to UVA, but that honestly was very routine for me. It was just, I'm just doing more of the same. It's just at a different location now. So the biggest transitions were definitely starting college, getting my math caught up, which I want to stress anybody can do. Like, if you go to high school and you learn all the math and then you decide to take a 5-year break, if you didn't do any math in that 5 years, you would start in developmental math, just as I was going to had I not done any. It's something I see all the time now as a tutor of 2 years. And also, if no matter what situation you're in, you can go and you can catch up. Like there's no reason you can't learn what was taught in high school faster and more efficiently for yourself, because you can cater to your own learning style. You can cater to, your schedule, and you're also catering to your own interests. You're doing it because you have a goal you want to accomplish. You can do it so much more efficiently, and you're going to retain it better than somebody who's learning it because they're told they have to learn it. So those are the big factors for me that allowed me to learn math quick, get caught up, start college, and then eventually transition into a math major instead, because engineering was just not for me in the end.
I love the story. Thanks so much for sharing it, Alec. And that piece that you're emphasizing there, I think that's a huge piece for unschooling parents, especially people that are coming new to unschooling, is to realize, because they're always, oh, is my child going to be behind? Going to be behind? But when you're looking at learning things when you're interested, and like you talked about how much easier and more effective that learning is when it's something that you're interested in. It's not like you were growing up, sitting in a corner not learning anything. You were learning so many things. So it's not like you were behind. It was just a different set of things you were choosing to learn at the time that eventually fit, because our interests are connections, just new things that we're discovering along the way. But like you even talked about how you had been picking up little bits of arithmetic tricks that you were doing for yourself along the way. When you look back, it's always when you look back, right? You can see the threads of how that interest just weaves through your lives. It's not like somebody is likely to take a 90-degree turn completely. You know what I mean? In that it's something completely new and unknown to them. So everything that they're doing when kids are learning stuff that they're interested in is very likely to feed into whatever new paths they pick up later on, right? So it's not like you lost any time. This whole definition of, ahead, behind, etc., is really artificial, right? It's just kind of created from that school curriculum. And like you said, you can, when you have an interest and want to pick something up, you can pick up that chunk of learning at any age, at any time you need, right?
Yep. Well, and also, just the notion of somebody being behind doesn't really make sense because, you talk to most adults. I know my parents, have forgotten most of the math they learned in school. Are they behind?
I know, right? Well,
I don't think they're behind.
That is something that helped me when I first started learning about unschooling, was looking back at my career, right? Okay, because I am an engineer, was an engineer.
What type of engineer?
Nuclear.
Okay, cool, sweet.
In the end, well, see, when I went from high school, I thought biomedical engineering. Right. So that's how things change. And then once I got out and I was working in engineering, I ended up always working in the computer side and in the reporting side, which when I look back, that's my thread, my systems thread, my love of those kinds of questions, of processes. So I was working with, maintenance engineering groups and helping them figure out their work process, et cetera, et cetera.
You're more like systems engineer then, right?
Yes, basically.
Yeah. My girlfriend's dad is a systems engineer over at UVA where we go to school. So I talk to him a lot about all the stuff that he loves and his theory and stuff and that. So it's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. But that was the point, I knew all the math and all the physics and everything that I learned in university, and then was actually, working as an engineer. And I knew how much I forgot, that I really had no need for. And so that was something that was really helpful for me to realize that, the stuff I remember and learn and I'm good at is the stuff that I was interested in, the stuff that I needed to use every day. So even that was such a helpful way to start understanding why it was okay that unschooling focused more on interests rather than curriculum, because I saw the curriculum stuff that I wasn't interested in basically, falling out of my brain as it was.
Yeah, absolutely. I was forced to take, I had to take a German intensive over this summer, and I took 2 years of German in 8 weeks, and it's already falling out of my head because why did I take it? I took it for an education requirement, not because I had to learn German, not because I wanted to learn German, which, so that's, life has enough hoops already, especially if you choose to go to college. So, why do we have to impose more hoops on children before they get to that point?
Yeah. No, that's a great point too. So do you want to take a couple minutes to speak to what we were talking about before, your transition to college and your experience with the other college students and the difference
Yes,
in the
yes.
levels of self-awareness and
Hmm.
agency and that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. So this problem exists less at UVA just because to get into UVA, you have to be a very, very driven person already. They have a very low acceptance rate. So I haven't really seen this at UVA because, the people who don't really know if they want to be there typically aren't going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
But at PVCC, a lot of the students are there because their parents say you have to do college.
Mm-hmm.
It's the next thing you do. I'm going to pay for it. Here you go. And they are kind of aimless while they're there. You'll be in classes with them, and they aren't entirely present. They aren't entirely engaged. They are thinking about something else. They want to be somewhere else, and they can struggle because they don't have something to. They don't have kind of an intrinsic reason to be there. They aren't self-driven. And that's one of the biggest differences. And this wasn't everybody, of course, but that was the biggest differences, or the biggest difference I noticed between people who were really successful at Piedmont and people who were maybe struggling and not doing as well. So,
yeah, it makes such a huge difference, doesn't it? I mean, even to be able to, like you were talking about this German, right? You have a bigger goal, right? So that was
I did very well while I was in German. I was speaking it and everything, but as soon as the goal disappeared, I mean, well, that's a separate topic entirely. But yeah, as soon as the goal disappeared, the German started falling out of my head.
Yeah. So imagine how hard it is for them. Like you're forced to go. When you look at it from their perspective, they have to go. And most often, I even here I've heard, because my kids are older now too, like you guys, you hear of their friends whose parents have said you have to go to college. I don't care what degree you get, whatever, but you
that doesn't even make sense to me.
a degree. Yeah, exactly. And how hard it is for them to stay engaged, to be interested, to want to show up day after day. It's a rough experience for them.
Because I already disagree with a lot of the hoops that college sets for you. For example, I think general education requirements are oftentimes too restrictive. I had to take courses that I was literally falling asleep in because I just had no interest in being there, even though my end goal was something I was interested in. So that's a problem already. Mm-hmm. So if you're being forced to jump through those hoops and you don't have that goal,
you don't care where you're going.
Yeah, you don't care where you're going, and you're having these hoops imposed on you.
Yeah,
and you're not enjoying the classes. That's too much. There's a reason.
And your parents are still judging you on how well you do there.
Yeah,
that's hard.
Yeah.
Anyway, how about I'd like to hear a little bit about what your plans are now for the next year or two. You're at UVA. Yeah.
So a year ago, I transferred to UVA. I've had my first year there. It went really well. And after this coming year, I'll graduate with my bachelor's in pure math. And then my hope is to continue grad school at UVA. I'd like to stay in the area and work on a doctorate here in math. So this semester I am working on GREs. I'm taking the GRE for math, general GRE, preparing for those, and then also doing a research project, hopefully in hyperbolic geometry with one of the professors at UVA to kind of build up a research. So I need some more research on my resume to really be extremely competitive for grad school. But if I can do that, I think I'll have a pretty good chance of getting in at UVA in their doctoral program for math. And then honestly, that'll be my life for the next 4 or 5 years. So, but after that, I'll piggyback off of that. I hope to teach math ultimately at the university level is what I'd like to do.
Oh, that's awesome. That's very cool. And is that one of your the geometry, hyperbolic geometry?
Hyperbolic geometry. Mm-hmm.
That's one of your favorite areas of math?
I don't know yet.
You don't
So
know yet.
it's not something I've studied yet. Yeah. Which
Ah,
is part of why, yeah. So the research project will likely be in an area that I don't have much experience in.
ah.
So my experience so far is mostly in kind of the typical analysis,
Mhm.
algebra, and I've taken my first courses in real analysis and abstract algebra, and this semester I'm taking advanced linear, another course in analysis, topology, differential geometry. So I'm starting to finally get into the more advanced fields of math that I could eventually choose one and specialize in it for a doctoral program. So,
So yeah,
but yeah,
an exploring the more funky areas now, right?
yeah, oh yeah, it's getting weird. It gets weird very quickly. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you, yeah, I don't know how much you remember from. I don't know if you took any proof-based math, but it can get very weird in some of them.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I won't get into that.
No, that's
um,
fine. Yeah, I'm not here to talk about that.
to quiz me. Yeah. No, no. I was trying to think what was my favorite areas, but anyway.
Maybe
One question.
calculus?
Pardon?
Maybe calculus? You liked
Calculus?
calculus?
Oh, well, I mean, calculus was a very interesting one because diving into that first year, that was like one of the courses that was, because I went to a school where they had engineering in the first year.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
So you did do engineering, and that was kind of the dividing class. If you could get through calculus, then because it was a general first year engineering, and then you
Yeah.
specialized after. So then I did engineering physics after. But yeah, getting through that first calculus course. But yeah, it was fun. I like math.
Okay.
I love math. So I was fine with engineering because they're like, oh, but if you take engineering physics, you have to keep taking math. And I'm like, well, that's okay. That's fun. But as I look back, I realize, I didn't have any. Our math professors were engineering professors.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep. Yeah, applied math.
they were all about, here's the formula, pick the right formula and do it. The formulas just got funkier.
And as you probably know, if you had any pure math friends, that is so, it goes against what we do.
Yes, I would have enjoyed that. The funkier, the fun stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And calculus is something I've been able to become so acquainted with because of my tutoring as well, as I've spent the last 2 years tutoring part-time, and that's the thing I tutor the most is calculus.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been really fun and that's also part of what's helping me see that teaching is what I'd really like to do.
That's very cool. Yeah, because when you can actually, sit and chat and about the problem, right? It's not all about let's get the right answer. When you can actually, because so often it's like, I'm doing this, but what does this actually look like in the real world?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And as you're plowing through an engineering degree and all those courses, it was not about the real world per se. It was all just, here's your analysis, here's your situation, plug your numbers in, and that's it. But anyway, no more complaining about that. The last question I would love to ask you, as a grown unschooler now, what piece of advice would you like to share with unschooling parents who are just starting out on the journey?
That's a hard question. So, but of course, let's see. So honestly, the best thing that my parents did for me was give me the freedom to make my own decisions, kind of a universal freedom to make my own decisions, within reason. But, when it came to what I put in my body, what I spent my time doing, when I slept, I was given the freedom to do all of those things, and it allowed me to make some poor decisions at times and learn from that and eventually become the healthy person that I am now, who, I really feel like the self-awareness I've gained from that, the fact that I know my body so well, I know my interests so well, I know myself so well. I think that's what it comes from, is that universal freedom I was given by my parents. So, it's hard to let go, but it helped me so much. It was, it helped me in so many ways, but I know that letting go is the hardest thing to do as a parent, probably. So
yeah.
but,
I love that piece. And I love that you threw in there that within reason thing, and I was going to say poor choices, but they weren't poor at the time. They were the choices
no,
at
I
the
made
time
poor
that
choices.
you learned.
I made poor choices. Are you kidding? Is it a good idea to drink a gallon of Kool-Aid a day? I don't know. But it tasted really good. And then, I didn't feel so great. And then it's like, oh, maybe I'll try more water. And now at 25, I'm drinking nothing but water, and everybody around me's got their Diet Coke or whatever. And not everybody, but the rates of drinking very unhealthy things is way up. And I got that out of my system and learned what that does to me on my own terms, and have been able to establish healthy habits for myself. So
just by, I know it's paradoxical, isn't it? It seems like
having the freedom to drink terrible things. Now I don't want to. So, and I feel like having it, if I had it restricted from age 0 all the way up to 18 or 19 or whatever when I was an adult, it would be much harder to form healthy habits because I want to be healthy. Because the only thing stopping me from drinking before would have been this restriction. Well, if you're avoiding something because of restriction, then it's not for yourself. You have to learn to do something like that for yourself. And that's what I was able to do from a very young age. Now, and the within reason, of course, I'm not saying you've got a 5-year-old kid and you have sugary snacks laying all over the house and they're eating nothing but that. I mean, there's common sense stuff too, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the within reason bit is the conversations that unschooling parents see.
Conversations, yes.
Sometimes when parents, new to unschooling parents give our kids freedom, they disconnect. They think of it as, okay, just leave them alone to make their choices. And no, the reason, within reason part but it's within the child's reason, but it's having conversations with them. It's helping them process those choices. Oh, gee, what happened after that? Oh, maybe that stomach ache is related to all that Kool-Aid, or, just helping them learn from it, not leaving them to try and figure it all out in the dark. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And that is, you brought it up, but the other thing I would have said if I thought of it myself first is definitely the communication. Unschooling is not unparenting. They're unrelated. There's no connection between the two. And my parents also always communicated to me and wanted to make sure I knew that, yes, those unhealthy things I was doing were unhealthy, and they wanted to make sure I knew that while I was doing it. But I still had the choice, and that's what allowed me to choose not to do that anymore for myself. So,
well, yeah, because when someone's telling you, when they take away that agency, when they take away that choice, then your choices aren't about you anymore. You know what I mean? Like, if they were judgmental they were sharing information about, oh, you might not be feeling well because of X choice, right? But if you could tell through their tone that they were trying to control you, your choice would be more in reaction to their kind of judgment than would be to you actually learning, gaining that self-awareness and making that choice for yourself, right? Yeah, that's
exactly.
a piece of it. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for chatting with me, Alec. I had so much fun, and it was great to catch up and hear what you are up to. Glad you're having fun.
Yes, I am having fun, and it'll be crazy, but it'll be fun. And,
exactly.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I had a great time.
Oh, that's wonderful. And before we go, where's the best place for people to connect with you online, if they can? I'm definitely cool with that. They can find me on Facebook under Alec Traaseth. It's just my regular first name and last name. And I should be the only Alec Traaseth on Facebook still, I think. I'm one of the only, I'm one of very few Traaseths in America, period. So kind of a weird last name.
But also, if you wanted to send me an email, I can give my email out as well. That's Alec Traaseth at yahoo.com. So that's ALEC TRAAS at yahoo.com. And there were two A's in that second part, TRAAS. So
Awesome. Well,
yeah,
thank you so
Facebook or email.
much. That's wonderful. Thanks, and have a great day, Alec.
All right, thank you so much. You too.